Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here. And today is the very first day of 2021. Does it feel different to you? I'm not necessarily sure it feels different to me, but I wanted to do outside of my normal breaches of the week. And if you follow me or listen to me on a regular basis or watch my videos, you know that every Sunday is breaches of the week. And I didn't want to disrupt the upcoming Sunday one. That will be the last disclosed breaches of 2020 that I can find. But I did want to go through some of the biggest data breaches that we have seen. Now, my hope here is that we are going to look at some of these huge data breaches, and then by virtue of this, in 2021, hopefully we're going to learn something and apply this, because Lord knows we don't want more breaches in 2021, and we're going to get them, but hopefully they're not going to be as bad. We had some crazy, crazy breaches this year, and so by virtue of that, I wanted to go through all of these because I think you guys are going to get a kick out of this. These are the ones I thought were the most interesting or the most damaging or damning or whatever they were that really stuck out as I compile notes week after week after week for the entire year. I think you guys will enjoy these. So with that, let's start in January with Estee Lauder. This is obviously the massive cosmetics corporation. They had 444 million records exposed, user emails, internal documents, and more. That obviously was a very huge issue, but we have some much bigger breaches in Estee Lauder, but that was huge in January. Skipping forward to March, and March was a crazy month for breaches, as you're about to see. We had cam4.com, which is apparently an adult streaming website. They got almost 10.9 billion records hit with tons of personally identifiable information, I believe, on the people that were using the site, as well as those that were actually putting out the content on the site. That was a huge, huge hit as well. And if you use them, you got hit back in March. Staying in March, we also had Keepnet Labs. They're based out of the United Kingdom. They are a security company. They had a leaky Elasticsearch database that exposed 5 billion records with passwords, both plain text and hashed, not to mention emails and more information and all of that. That was a huge, huge disaster. And it's never fun to see a security company get hit. But in March, we are not done with the security settings or apps or companies or anything, because the next one that we had in March was Whisper. They literally billed themselves out as, quote, the safest place on the internet. This was essentially an app where you could share essentially secrets and information in a very secure way. They had an unprotected database that had over 900 million records of personally identifiable information. That was a huge, huge problem. So if you use Whisper, heads up. In May, we saw what was, until very recently, the largest data breach of 2020, and it ranks as number 2, and that is Blackbaud. Now, this is the fundraising management platform for nonprofits, foundations, schools, hospitals, all that kind of stuff. They got hit with ransomware. Basically, personally identifiable information was exposed. They later came out and said, also, a select number of customers had their social security numbers hit as well. And this has launched a ton of disclosures. It was months, every single week for months. I was saying, this is who is disclosing a Blackbaud breach. We're still seeing these on occasion pop up. And now the lawsuits are starting to fly against Blackbaud. This was a huge disaster, and it was gearing up to be the #1 breach of the year by virtue of it being a supply chain hit to hundreds, at least hundreds of organizations. And you probably know what the #1 is if you follow me, but we will get to that soon. Moving on, in June, we had the data tracking startup by Oracle, BlueKai. Oracle bought them for something like $400 million, and they exposed billions of records. They were basically scouring about anywhere from 1% to 2% of the entire internet traffic, which is a massive amount of traffic. And so they had records from Fortune 500 companies, from governments. Everything got exposed basically in June, or at least they disclosed in June that BlueKai was leaky and exposing data left and right. And so that obviously was a huge, huge problem. Sticking in June, we had Digital Management Inc., or DMI. They did managed IT and security services for NASA, for SpaceX, and others. they got hit by the Doppelpaymer ransomware gang, who basically posted out, congratulations to SpaceX on your recent launch. If you recall, there's a SpaceX launch around this time in June, but that was exposing a ton of information from NASA, SpaceX, and others, or rather, Doppelpaymer said they had this information, including HR records and more, which is what they put out on the dark web. So that was a huge, huge issue as well. Sticking in June, like March, June was absolutely bonkers, although this is the last one we're going to be talking about in June, and that would be Wattpad. Now, they are basically a publishing website for user-generated stories. You can write a story there, possibly get it funded. I looked at their website as I was compiling these notes. They had 268 million records sold on the dark web in an identity theft forum in June due to having an open database. And here we are. So if you used Wattpad back in June or before, your information got dumped and sold on the dark web. That is confirmed. In October, skipping ahead a little bit, because if I were to do every single breach that I thought was interesting, we would be here for 2 hours. So these are the juiciest, craziest, whatever. This would be Broad Voice. This is a voice over IP vendor. They exposed 2 million recorded voicemails, 200,000 of which were transcribed. That's 10%, and basic personally identifiable information like emails, and other basic information were exposed. So in other words, essentially people could listen to voicemails that had been recorded and were basically put out into the cloud into an unsecured database. As I mentioned in my video yesterday, one of those things I think we're going to be seeing in 2021 is a real focus on locking down your Amazon AWS or your Microsoft Blob or your Google Cloud or whatever you are using, because a lot of these things are misconfigured, or they're basically sitting there without a password, or the password is very basic, as we're about to get to. So this was a huge, huge issue. Broad Voice, that is crazy, because now it's not just the voicemails where people are talking about personal things. Possibly you've got a voice recognition issue as well, as we start ramping up a lot of the different deep fakes and facial recognitions and all of that. So that is a very potentially bad thing for anybody that was on Broad Voice. And in December, finally, this is the #1 breach by far of the entire year. SolarWinds is a huge IT software and cloud vendor, and they are used by Fortune 500, governments worldwide. I have done 3 different videos with slideshows and obviously corresponding podcasts that go through just how bad this is. This is the breach that essentially Russian intelligence was able to insert backdoors into the software that affected thousands of companies, governments. Their SEC disclosure, which I thought was not good, said at least 18,000 of their 33,000 SolarWinds Orion customers got hit. And this has also led to other discoveries of other backdoors, insertions of other malware, other vectors. This is a huge problem. If this company survives, I will be shocked. But basically, the United States federal government, and we're talking about the Department of Defense, the Secretary of State, Commerce, all of these were hit because they were using Orion software. We got infiltrated massively around the globe. Governments, corporations. This was not just the United States, it was everywhere. That is crazy. And so that is your #1 breach, dwarfing the #2 breach, which was Blackbaud. And with that, I want to give an honorable mention to the top 2020 passwords. Now, if you look at this, this is essentially was of breached passwords. Over 275 million passwords were evaluated in a database, and these were the top passwords that were found. You see the top 11 here. This is absolutely crazy that once again, 2.5 million people had a password of 123456. That is a password you use on your luggage. If you know that reference, that's insane. Add 789 and you've got #2. Picture 1, that's a new one, but please, people, we can do much better than this. Make sure that your passwords are of 4 character sets, uppercase, lowercase, special characters like exclamation points, dashes, asterisks, that kind of things, and numbers 0 through 9. Basically, use those and make sure your passwords are of good aggressive length, because if I see a password like #10, which is new on the list, Senha, SENHA, you can see the time to crack it is 10 seconds. And that is basically nothing. Picture 1, 3 hours. And that's probably on a moderate array. It's very easy to crack these things. So make sure that when you are looking at these or you are assigning a password, you're not using this, because this is leading to a lot of the breaches. SolarWinds password was SolarWinds123. I could guess that. We had other passwords that were exposed that were apparently very easy. There was a hacker in Scandinavia that claimed to have compromised President Trump's Twitter account, basically to show that he could do it. And he claimed, and now the authorities, I believe it's in the Netherlands or maybe Germany, was actually agreeing that, yeah, he actually did this. He said the password was MAGA 2020 exclamation point. Don't pick passwords like this. So we have a whole bunch of breaches. This is what's getting us hit, on top of misconfigurations and everything else that we've got going on, not to mention people clicking phishing links and on and on and on. So please, please, people, make sure that you are using good passwords and you're securing your stuff down. And those were the top 2020 breaches of 2020. And hopefully 2021 is going to be a lot better. And here we are. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe and stay online. Happy 2021, everybody.